Hello, everyone, and welcome to Judy's Creations in Crochet. Today is November 25th, 2021, and I want to begin by wishing a very happy Thanksgiving to all my American friends and followers. I hope you are all having a safe, happy, and healthy holiday season. For those of you that are joining me, maybe for the first time, I live in southwestern Ontario and about an hour from the southernmost tip of Canada. And maybe you would enjoy going back to see some of my other videos, especially my first one where I introduce myself and explain what I'm all about. This is only my 10th video, so that wouldn't be very many videos to go back and watch. Today is going to be all about ponchos, but before I start, I do want to address a couple of other issues. The first has to do with the yarn that I show. And my first video talks about the fact that I don't do yarn hauls. I don't show you all the yarn that a lot of the other channels show you. Because you can see I am a fan of the more expensive luxury yarns. These are all from Expression Fiber Arts, and I have shown you yarns from other companies, other places in the world that all fall into the category that I would call our luxury yarns. And I absolutely love hand-dyed yarns. And I try yarns from a wide variety of indie dyers. And so you may be saying, well, why should we watch this channel? I can't afford all those beautiful luxury yarns, or I don't want to use them because I have easy access to the big box stores. Especially if you're in the US, you have Michael's, Hobby Lobby, Joann's Fabric, and your Walmarts carry a good selection as well. Our Walmart has very little. My Michael's doesn't have a big selection either, and that's all that I have access to without going to a specialty yarn shop. And there is not a specialty yarn shop within probably a couple 100 miles of me. So I do all my ordering online. Yes, I do prefer the luxury yarns, and yes, I will show you a lot of that for two reasons. First of all, I don't have access to the big box stores, so if I'm online, I might as well order the other, and I love the others. I like to use them, and I want to show my followers something a little different than everybody else is showing them. Lots and lots of channels will show you the yarns that you can get in the big box stores. And that's the other reason I don't show them as much, is because you can find them on many, many, many other channels. Probably there's hundreds of channels out there that do yarn hauls of what you can see and find in those stores that you have easy access to in the US. The rest of the world doesn't have access to those. And I really want to show people something different. And I know most of you, or a lot of you, won't be buying the specialty yarns, but all the things I make can be made with anything. But I do encourage you to maybe once buy a very special yarn. It's a treat that you deserve to give yourself at some point. But I also want to tell you that I do use the other yarns that you are familiar with. Lion Brand, Karen, Premier, and some of the others, Bernat, and so on. Probably my favorite line, or the one I use the most when I don't use specialty yarns, would be Lion Brand. And you'll see a lot of that today. And I like the Karen cakes. I don't use much Premier because I don't have any access to it. And at one time I did order online. I had a very bad experience, which was mostly the fault of the delivery company they deal with. And I'm not going to get into that. So today, when I show you my ponchos, you're going to see that I do use the more common yarns. But again, because I'm not a big fan of a 4 weight and a 5 weight and a 6 weight, although you saw me use a couple of those in the cowls a few weeks ago, I prefer a lightweight. And so you have to buy the specialty yarns to get, say, a number 2, a fingering, or whatever. But today will be ponchos that are all done in the heavier weights with yarns that are more common to most of you. So we'll start with the poncho I'm wearing. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say about the ponchos I'm going to show you today, I have 10 ponchos, and I don't think I'll get to all of them. We'll see if I talk too much. I may have to do some another day. But what I do want to show you in the ponchos that I show today are different methods of making ponchos. Most of us think of making the circle and putting a point at one side and across the opposite side to give you a point at the front and a point at the back. I'm going to show you some of those, of course, but I'm going to show you other ways that a poncho can be constructed. And this first one is an example of different than the typical. So this particular poncho is made from yarn called jeans from lion brand. Now, this is one of the colors right here, but this line has many shades of blue, as you can see. Really deep navy blue, a little lighter blue, and there's a third and a fourth color of blue. So this particular poncho was made with squares. I did all of these squares, and I did them all the same size. You could do them whatever size you wanted. And I happened to make them with a moss stitch. I believe the pattern I was using just had straight single crochet or half double crochet, something simple. I happened to like the moss stitch, so I made all of these in moss stitch, and then I put them together, and you can see the back also. And then I did several rows, quite a few rows in the neckline, and I also did several rows at the bottom to go around the entire shape. Now, what's different about this, first of all, it's constructed by putting squares together. It has the point front and back, but it also has a point here on both arms, on both sleeves. Now, I'm not usually a fan of putting a point on the sides. If you follow Crystal at all, she makes a lot of ponchos and shows ponchos, and she does some with 2 points front and back, but she does quite a number with 4 points, a point for each arm as well. And they get quite big. This is very cozy, and the yarn is very comfortable. And I'll tell you honestly, I didn't follow the pattern properly. I think I made more squares than I was supposed to, and I didn't. I was still somewhat new to crochet. This has got to be maybe 4 years or 5 years ago. New in that I had just returned to crochet. And I wasn't really following the instructions properly on how to put the squares together, so it became bigger than it should have been. I'll just tell you quickly about this yarn. I really, really like this yarn. The soft factor is great. This is called Faded, this color. It is, where does it tell me the yarn? Oh, 100% acrylic. And it's a number 4 weight, and it has 246 yards or 225 meters in the ball. And I love the feel of it, and I have made other things. I made a family member a cocoon out of just the dark cocoon cardigan. She absolutely loves it, takes it with her everywhere. So that's the first poncho that I wanted to show you. Now, let's have a look at what Hope is wearing. And I can't tell you a lot about this one, Again, it is one of the ones that you make the circle, you join it, and then you make a point front, and back, and that's it. You just keep going around, increasing as you go. I honestly don't know what color this is or what yarn it is. It's something I had in a container for quite a while. I just saw it. It's multicolored, which I like, and I'm not sure if you can see. It has sparkles in it. I don't think you can tell. And all I did was a plain poncho with double crochets, and every so often I skipped just to make an open row, just to give it a little bit of interest. And the orange, I do know that the orange is Havana White, Havana's Choice yarn, which I believe is a Lion brand. So I just put a few rows of it in where I felt like it, because I purposely bought a couple balls of it to go with this other one. I bought it, and like I said, it sat in a drawer for a long time, and I honestly can't remember what this is. In my mind, I want to say it was a Loops and Threads, but I've never seen Loops and Threads do anything like that, so I can't be sure. So that is your normal poncho pattern. Make a circle, and then at the halfway points, you make a point, and that's generally, you go in one stitch with excuse me, double crochet, a couple of chains, and a double crochet, or you may do two double crochets, a couple of chains, two double crochets, depending on the pattern, how to make that point. And then you just follow that around. Now I want to show you some ponchos made differently. And there are lots of patterns out there that have these differences in them, and you can find them on Ravelry or even YouTube. So the first one I made, I actually made one of these prior to this, and I gave it as a gift to a good friend of mine. It was in a different color. So you can see that this is made from a granny square. It's solid though, it doesn't have the granny clusters, but I made two granny squares, front and back. And the original pattern had four granny squares because they put the other granny square here along the sides of the first. And by putting four granny squares together in this manner, so that you have your point front and back, I find that the granny squares, in order to be big enough for your front and back, are way too big to put across the shoulders. They give a huge neckline. Now, you could go inside the neckline like I did here and stitch it smaller. That's one way to do it. But I decided that it was just too much. So I simply, at the edge of my granny square, did rows going back and forth until it made a neckline big enough to join the other granny square on the other side. So can you see that? And you see I have a granny square here. See the granny square? I have straight lines across the shoulder, and then I have another granny square at the back. I think you can see that when I hold it up, that the granny square has many rows across the shoulder. And that's one way to make, you can make four granny squares, and maybe you can make them small enough and then go around it or whatever to make it bigger. And I will make some more with four granny squares and maybe smaller and do something else. Now, the yarn I used for this is the actual bit of the ball I had left. It took almost 6, I think 5 and a bit to make it, and the yarn is actually from Rico, and it's called Creative Melange. It's a DK weight, you can see there, or a number 3. And it is, see if I can find out how much is in here. I don't think, see, these come from, I'm trying to think where I got them, but I think they come from, Rico sounds Italian, but I think you get it in the UK somewhere. I don't see any, oh, it's 47% polyacrylic, 40 and 53% wool. So 53% wool and 47% acrylic, and the actual number of yards is not on here. So I can't tell you how much is in a ball, but I have 6 of these to make another one. I'm not sure what pattern I'll use. So that's making the granny square type of ponchos, which there are quite a few of those out there. Now, next is, now this is also a very, and I have 2 in this style. This is also a very popular style. I'll show you the poncho first. Yeah, have you seen the whole thing? And these ponchos, and I find them something I find easy to make, and I can whip them up pretty quickly. You can choose the stitch you want. There are lots and lots of different patterns that you can use for the panels. This happens to be just a double crochet, and it's made like this. You have 2 rectangular strips exactly the same size, and then you take, I'm going to actually put this together for you, then you take the small end and put it along the side, the long side. So I'm going to tape that together. So you have that construction. Not well done, but you know. Then you take the small end of this one and place it the same way on this long edge of this one. So let me tape that together. And you can make this with any yarn. You can make it any size, although depending on the person, you want to be careful. So it has gone together like this, but then you simply crease it. Doesn't want to crease. Crease it together and make a poncho out of it. And all that is, and then you get a seam here and a seam in the back, and they'll be going opposite ways to each other. I think you can see here that my stripes are going in opposite directions. This one is going this way and that one that way. And you can decide to make it lengthwise, or you can decide to make it back and forth across, whichever your preference is. I guess it depends a little bit on the pattern you're using, which way you might want to go, but you end up with a poncho that looks like this. So this is the first one I have to show you. I think I have 2 made in this style. Now this particular one is made with Scarfie. And Scarfie is probably up in my top 10 list. Scarfie is by Lion Brand, and I think I've shown you this before. And Scarfie is 78% acrylic and 22% wool. So for those of you that are allergic to wool, you might not be able to use this, but I find it very soft, as Crystal would say, scarfable. It is considered a number 5, and this is probably the only number 5 that I would tell you I really like. I have made ponchos with it. I have made cocoon cardigans with it. I think I've made some, I used to make Afghans when I was donating them to the church with it. And this has 285 meters or 312 yards. You probably, depending on the size, you might be able to get away with one scarfie for each rectangle, but I think three would be a better option, just to be sure. This particular one is called Cranberry Black. It's quite red. I have this in many, many, many colors. They do have, I think, maybe 24 different colors, and they've added to the line. I really like it. Okay, that's that one. Next, I have another one made in the same style. I made two rectangles and I put them together. You can see the seam right here. And I used, and if you turn it around, you have see, it's much darker on the back. All the dark colors fell together there. And the lighter colors fell together there. And this is made with Lion Brand's Mandala Roving. Now, I don't have any of that color left, but this is Mandala Roving. And it is so soft. And I like roving. They don't have this in very many colors. I really wish they would extend this line. This is considered a number 3. I don't know. It's certainly heavy. Number 3 is DK, and it's certainly heavier than this number 3. But very close to a 4-weight, but very, very soft. Where is the 100% acrylic? And I use 2 balls because it has 415 yards, 380 meters. 2 balls, 1 ball for each strip, each rectangle, and a little bit left over. And it was enough. And in fact, on this one, because I made the difference between the width and the length just a little bit too much, I had a big neck. And I want to talk about that in a minute. And so I made a few extra rows on the neckline. It's important to think about how wide and how long you want it. I think doing something like about 18 or 19 inches across and maybe 31 to 33 inches in length. You have to decide which works best for you. So that might give you, say, 14 inches difference if you do 19 by 33 or 18 by 32. Or you could do 18 by 31 and only give you 13 inches difference in the two. Will come close to giving you a nice size neckline. Now, there are people that love to have big necklines and have them falling off. But I find a lot of the poncho patterns, the ones that are done in the circle and joined and then make the 2 points, I find a lot of them give you a very big neckline. And I had somebody ask me about that, so I'm going to talk about that now while you see this one in front of you. I don't want a poncho that's falling off my shoulders. And I don't have very wide shoulders, so it has to be kind of small for me. Now, if you're making a cover-up for the summer, that might be great. But when I'm making a poncho that I want to wear outside to give me some warmth in the fall, and some people might even wear them in the winter, wear a poncho that's heavier, I don't want it falling off my shoulders. So either I make the circle smaller, but then you may have problems with the pattern. And sometimes if you make the circle too small, it doesn't increase fast enough to get over your shoulders. So you have bunching here. So I might make the circle a tiny bit smaller, or if I need to leave it the same because of the pattern, then when I'm all done, I go back and I stitch around the neckline. And you can see that's where I've joined. And I do decreases at the 2 point. Now, some people would just go around. I find it still too baggy. So I do a decrease. I might only decrease like two together. Sometimes I'll do two double crochet two together or single crochet two together, front and back. And I go around until I get that neck so that I'm happy with it, which is what I did here. I'm happy with that size. It won't fall off. So that's my advice to those of you, especially people who have smaller frames. If you have a smaller frame, then you could just decrease the number of chains in the beginning chain and make the whole thing a little bit smaller, because a poncho will get as big as you want wide wise as you go around and increase going down. But if you just want a smaller neckline but like the poncho size, then just go around the neckline as many times as you want. And you can see here I only did 3, but in this one I did a lot. I don't know, there must be 10 or 12 there. So that's the second one that that is put together with, I have a little buddy down here. That's the second one that's put together with the 2 rectangles. I'm starting to run short of time, so I'm only going to show you one more that is totally different, because all the others are your basic do a circle and put a point front and back. But this one is very different. See the points? This was made this way. It was an asymmetrical triangle. I made one asymmetrical triangle in the front, and then I made another asymmetrical triangle in the back, and they were put together along the wide side, joined to make a neckline the size you want, stitched together here. You can stitch it all the way, or you can leave a little bit open at the end like I did, and stitched along this side. So that's 2 asymmetrical triangles put together. They're opposite to each other, so that you get sort of an asymmetrical poncho. You get the point to one side on the front and the point to the other side on the back, as you can see by those 2 points at the bottom. And that's kind of a cool idea. It certainly looked very nice on the model, and I like the look of it. On me, I'm not sure I'm crazy for it, but there it is. And it's a nice weight yarn, and it again is a different yarn. I don't use much, but I have a bunch of it to do some other things with, and it's called King Cole Riot. And this definitely comes from the UK, and they're variegated, as you could see by this one. We were disappointed. I ordered this for a friend, and it looked very blue and silvery, light gray, maybe light blues. It looked all blue and gray tones. And when it arrived, you can see it has many other colors in it, which wasn't what she wanted. But anyway, the King Cole Riot double knitting, so it's a DK 3-weight, and it is made up of 30% wool and 70% premium acrylic. Feels nice. There is a little bit of wool in it, and I guess you can tell when you feel. It has 294 meters or 324 yards. And this particular one took me most of 4 of these. So each asymmetrical triangle took almost 2 balls. And this is just made up of, I'm pretty sure it's just double crochet. Yes, it's just an asymmetrical triangle of double crochets. I'm sure you see many of those patterns around. Increase as you go to get that shape. And so that is the different styles that I have made so far. I have a few other patterns I want to make that have different granny squares and they're put together differently. Most of the other ponchos that I have done, I've shown you a few done out of the gradient cakes, and they're just the circle with the point front and back. So that brings us to the end of what I have to show you today. So that means I'll be able to do another video showing you ponchos maybe in the new year with the yarns that I used for them. Now, what about next week? Next week, believe it or not, is the beginning of December. It's December the 2nd. It'll be Christmas before we know it. So for next week, first of all, I want to start by showing you an advent calendar. I purchased the advent calendar from Reggie at J Hook Crochet, and I have had it since the end of September. She shipped them the 1st of September, Labor Day, because being in Germany, she was shipping around the world and she wanted to make sure we got it in time. Well, I had it by the end of September. You know how hard it is to sit on that and not look at it? I mean, I opened the package to see what was in it, but I definitely have not opened the yarn. And that's what I'm going to start next week. I'm going to show you all the things that came in the entire package. And I will, because it's December 2nd, I will open skeins 1 and skeins 2. They're all mini skeins, and there is a pattern in there to put them together, which I will probably do near the end of the month. And every week after that, I will show you the next 7 skeins so we can sort of open it together. So I'm going to start with that next week, and then I'm just going to fill in with some odds and ends of things that I have wanted to talk to you about or to show you. So I hope you'll join me again next week to start that advent calendar. And until then, happy hooking.